Coming up on today's Airborne, the NTSB says nothing has been ruled out in the 787 battery investigation. Grounding the 787s will not affect development of the Airbus A-350, and Pinnacle prepares to move to Minnesota. I'm Ashley Hale. Welcome to Airborne on Aero-TV. NTSB Chair Deborah Hersman has released preliminary findings from the NTSB's ongoing investigation into the January 7, 2013 Boeing 787 battery fire in Boston. Hersman said the expectation in aviation is to never experience a fire on board an aircraft. Yet within 2 weeks, there were 2 incidents of batteries overheating on the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, resulting in the grounding of the entire worldwide fleet, about which Hersman said, quote, "One of these events alone is serious. 2 of them in close proximity, especially in an airplane model with only about 100,000 flight hours, underscores the importance of getting to the root of the cause in these incidents," end quote. Hersman went on to report that the initial investigation has revealed that the battery in the B787 fire in Boston showed signs of short-circuiting and had indications of thermal runaway, a situation in which a significant temperature increase can initiate a destructive chain reaction. The investigation has now become a 2-pronged probe, wanting to know not just what happened to cause the thermal runaway. Eventually, the NTSB will make recommendations to prevent a recurrence of the battery problems. The investigation is now ongoing at the NTSB labs in Washington, D.C., as well as at sites in Arizona, Seattle, Washington, and Japan. Meanwhile, at Boeing, the company released a statement saying in part, quote, "The company has formed teams consisting of hundreds of engineers and technical experts who are working around the clock with the sole focus of resolving the issue and returning the 787 fleet to flight status." Recent problems with Boeing's Dreamliner have led to questions about the certification process for another composite construction airplane, the Airbus A-350-X-W-B. But an official for the planemaker's parent company says there is no connection between the two. Tom Patton has that story.
Ashley Eads' Director of Strategy, Marwan Lahoud, said that the grounding of all 50 Dreamliners that have been delivered will not affect the A350-X-W-B program, and that the first of Airbus's composite construction airplanes is on track for its planned 2014 manufacture. The remarks came in an interview given by Lahoud on French Radio Classique, according to the French news service AFP. He said Boeing's problems with the Dreamliner would not affect the certification of the A350. Lahoud said the certification processes were in no way connected and that there is, quote, "no link between the steps for certification of an aircraft and those for another one," end quote. Lahoud told the interviewer that the news about the Dreamliner is neither good or bad for Eads and Airbus. But an Eads executive who spoke on the condition of anonymity told AFP there were concerns that both the FAA and EASA might make procedures for testing and certification of new airliners more stringent following the Dreamliner incidents. For Airborne, I'm Tom Patton.
From Memphis to Minnesota, Pinnacle's employees will have to adjust to a climate change as the company emerges from bankruptcy. The company announced late last week that the decision to relocate came after an exhaustive evaluation of the most cost-effective option as the company emerges from Chapter 11. The present headquarters, located in Memphis, Tennessee, was also evaluated. John Spangers, president and CEO of Pinnacle Airlines, explained, saying, quote, "We had the responsibility to explore every aspect of our business to find opportunities to reduce costs, including evaluating our property leases to find the most economical options for Pinnacle. Our analysis covered everything from the available labor pool and operational alignment to economic incentives," end quote. Pinnacle presently occupies 170,000 square feet at One Commerce Square in downtown Memphis, which houses approximately 500 employees. Tentative plans call for the move to Minnesota to be completed by May of 2013. The UK Air Accident Investigations Branch has released a report on an accident in which an AW-109 helicopter struck the jib of a construction crane, fatally injuring the pilot and a pedestrian. The collision occurred at a height of approximately 700 feet in conditions of reduced visibility. The pilot, who was the sole occupant of the helicopter, and a pedestrian were fatally injured when the damaged helicopter impacted a building and adjacent roadway. At the time of the accident, it was reported that 13 others on the ground were also injured, but the AAIB did not confirm that number. The transcript depicts a fairly normal conversation between the pilot and the Thames ATC. After climbing to 1,500 feet AGL, a few minutes before 0800 local time, the pilot was asked by the controller if he needed an IFR transit through some fog. The pilot replied that, quote, "I have good VMC on top, that's fine," end quote. ATC gave the pilot a contact frequency, at which point the pilot began a right turn and impacted the construction crane. The report indicates that the pilot was advised by a fellow pilot via calls and text messages not to attempt the flight until some heavy fog had lifted, but the accident pilot said he had already started his engines. The FAA has granted an STC to Autopilot manufacturer Century Flight Systems for the installation of their Century 4000 Autopilot and Cessna 182 series aircraft. This initial STC covers the C4000 Autopilot in 11 models of the Cessna 182 Skyline series, including the 182E through the 182Q. Models with Horton or Robinson STOL are included with the STC. Approximately 20,000 of these specific models of aircraft were built between the year 1961 through 1985. The C4000 uses advanced digital and analog circuitry to process position and rate data to produce the most accurate and comfortable flight dynamics available in rough or smooth air. This, along with the fact that position and rate autopilot do not need to disengage in turbulent air, makes for an autopilot that is safer and more convenient to fly. Pricing for the C4000 Autopilot starts at $19,995 plus installation. You're watching Airborne, more in a moment.
Since its inception, Redbird Flight Simulations has been dedicated to developing new training technologies and processes in an ongoing effort to make aviation safer, more affordable, and more accessible.
We're using technology to make this kind of training accessible to all flight schools of all sizes and all budgets, and to democratize flying in general, because we make this kind of training more accessible to people.
For more information about Redbird Flight Simulations, as well as Redbird's new Skyport, visit www.redbirdflightsimulations.com or www.redbirdskyport.com.
Welcome back. If you'd like to suggest a story for Airborne, Aero-TV, our website, or podcast, you can always drop us an email to news-spy@aero-news.net. NASA's Mars exploration rover, Opportunity, one of the twin rovers that bounced to airbag-cushioned safe landings on Mars 9 years ago this week, is currently examining veined rocks on the rim of an ancient crater. Opportunity has driven 22.3 miles since it landed on Mars on January 24, 2004. What makes that special is that its original assignment was to keep working for just 3 months, to drive about 2,000 feet and provide the tools for researchers to investigate whether the area's environment had ever been wet. Opportunity has proven to be sort of a spacefaring Energizer bunny in that it just keeps going and going and going. It landed in a backyard-sized bowl, the Eagle Crater. During those first 3 months, it transmitted back to Earth evidence that water long ago soaked the ground and flowed across the surface. Since then, the missions team at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, has driven Opportunity to successively larger craters. This month, Opportunity is using cameras on its mast and tools on its robotic arm to investigate outcrops on the rims of the Endeavour crater, 14 miles in diameter. Opportunity has operated on Mars 36 times longer than the 3 months planned as its prime mission. It's Tuesday and time for our Aero Video of the Week. Today, we take a look at the trip undertaken by a flight of 2 Zenith aircraft, a STOL CH-750 and the Zenith CH-650 to Sebring, Florida for the U.S. Sport Aviation Expo. You can find the video on YouTube if you search Flight of 2 Zeniths. Marine Helicopter Squadron 1, charged with operating the fleet of presidential helicopters known as Marine 1, is preparing for delivery of its first MV-22 tilt-wing rotorcraft. The aircraft engine nacelles and tail empennage are painted in the iconic green of the presidential squadron. The remaining parts of the aircraft will be painted before delivery. More than a dozen MV-22s, the Marine Corps' variant of the V-22 Osprey, will be assigned to HMX-1. The MV-22s will be assigned to the Executive Support Squadron, providing logistics and passenger support to Marine 1 flights, and it will be responsible for flying very important persons to various locations in and around Washington, D.C. It is not expected that the President will fly on the aircraft. The MV-22s will replace the CH-46Es operating with the squadron. Finally, today on Airborne, it's one of the most famous lines from the 1980 cult classic film, The Princess Bride. But when a passenger wearing a t-shirt with a quote showed up on a Qantas flight recently, it reportedly made several other passengers nervous. Wyland Mullins was wearing a t-shirt that had a large image of a name tag, like those worn at some social functions, saying, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepare to die." The line is one of the best known from the movie, but the shirt apparently caused some discomfort for other passengers. Prior to takeoff, Mullins, a New Zealander living in Sydney, Australia, was approached by a flight attendant and asked if he could take off the shirt because his humor was apparently not appreciated by some of the other passengers. He was told that some were intimidated by the shirt. Mullins reportedly said he didn't have another shirt handy, so a flight attendant tried but failed to find him something else to wear. Consequently, Mullins said the crew didn't make eye contact with him for the entire flight to Auckland, New Zealand. When contacted, Qantas said they had no record of the incident, so it must have been handled by the crew. In a statement, the airline said, quote, "Qantas does have dress standards for passengers traveling on our aircraft, particularly for slogans which other passengers may find offensive or threatening," end quote. Well, here's a tip for Qantas. If you're going to ask a guy to take off his shirt, keep a stash of some company t-shirts in an overhead bin. Well, that's our program. Remember, you can get comprehensive, real-time, 24/7 coverage of the latest aviation and aerospace stories anytime at Aero-News.net. And please remember, Airborne is streamed twice weekly and is always online. Join us again this Friday. I'm Ashley Hale. Thanks for watching.